Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Rajan, the managing partner at Upekkha. Hello.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Super happy to have you. We already had Prasanna on the podcast. We talked about Upekkha, the SaaS accelerator for companies, and it was a fantastic conversation. But today we'll be speaking about AI in SaaS. Obviously, you work with a lot of SaaS founders. So my first question to you would be, what do you think changed since the launch of ChatGPT?
Um, so just to give a little bit of background, Christian, 15 years ago, I built an AI startup, and at that time, I was hand building what are called as feature vectors in the startup that I built, called the Swift vectors. And ever, I did good work there, but I did not see a lot of business adoption in that. And practically every startup that was there at that particular point in time, there was a company called Nevin Vision. Google had acquired a company called Ria, which was heavily funded, but none of them actually did really well in terms of business. And what occurred to me was that this was like a great technology. I had studied computer vision when I had graduated from college, but this was not translating into business results. What has happened with ChatGPT is that suddenly there is this uptick of business adoption and user adoption, right? In the last 15 years or 20 years, in fact, if you go all the way till when AI started in the 1950s, it was a great research subject inside the labs. Researchers would get excited about like what is happening, but it is really in this year where I would say that a remarkable shift has happened in terms of how people have taken that research technology and turned it into business application. 100 million users in 2 months is like mind blowing, right?
Yes.
And this is the fastest technology ever. I mean, the other fast technology that had that kind of adoption was TikTok. Took about a year or two. I mean, one of the slowest technology to get to 100 million users was telephone, the old dialer telephones that we know from our grandparents' age. That took about 75 years to get to 100 million users, right? Facebook took 5 years to get there. So the rate of adoption is what is mind-boggling, which even if you say that they are all early adopters, there is real some business value that is out there. So that is what has changed, Christian.
That's fantastic. And what do you think made ChatGPT so successful? Because there are other tries before in the past, but what made the timing so good?
I think when OpenAI started, Sam actually has talked about it in his several interviews. Many people thought that even though they had like credible people like Sam Altman and Elon Musk start out, they thought they were all frauds. That's the perspective that people had. And if you even look at when OpenAI had started, they were experimenting with a lot of technology that Elias Utkever and others had built in their previous organization and came forward. And then they built out things like DALI. It created some amount of excitement, but it did not turn into this exciting thing that had happened. In my mind, what is unique about ChatGPT, and many of these things we can only understand in retrospect, right? So here, what you would see is that GPT, right, which is different from DALI. Like GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer, right? This is a certain architecture of AI. This is a certain architecture of machine learning, which is very different from what was done in 2012 or in 2007 when I was doing AI, or when it was done in years before. The transformer architecture, which was actually invented inside Google, right? So this was a famous paper called "Attention is all you need." That
Mhm.
architecture is what underlies GPT. But that was like a fundamental architecture change. But I would also say that that alone was not sufficient. Like since the last couple of years, we've seen this explosion in chat as an interface. So we've seen a lot of these chatbot platforms that have come up. So when the OpenAI folks took the transformer architecture, which was built inside Google, which was invented inside Google, they implemented it. And then they layered a chat interface on top of it, the UI. That combination, I think, it captured a lot of people's fancy. And that I would say is one of the biggest reason of ChatGPT taking off. So there was an underlying technology change that happened, but it had a fantastic UI layer on top of it, which everybody could relate with. And then when they started querying this like powerful technology, then they were like, mind blown by the kind of answers that it was able to give. So it turned into this jaw drop moment or this magic moment that people were like, oh my God, like, I can speak to a chat interface that can actually answer questions really, really intelligently. The difference for the ChatGPT and the other chat interface was many people were trying to build AI behind the chatbot platforms that they were building. They used to call this as the conversational AI platform, but none of those were like powerful enough. Think about this as that you had good UI, but they were powered by battery. But now because of GPT, you have that new good UI, but that is powered by like a very strong electricity, right? So you could think of powerful experience out of that.
Thank you so much for explaining. It makes total sense. I really, you did great. Yeah. My next question would be, what opportunities do you see in the future? What categories will be created in SaaS now that we have this amazing technology?
So a lot of changes are happening, Christian, and some of these changes will be both overestimated and underestimated. One of the things that I am really like excited about from a SaaS perspective is that there are two broad changes that are happening. One is at the end user level, user experiences are changing. I don't know if you followed some of the announcements that happened last week in the Databricks summit that was held in Moscone Center. They were introducing natural language as the next language to Python to do data science, right? So one language that is changing, like no more programming languages like C, C Sharp, Java, right? So they're all going to turn into this natural language. The second thing that I think is happening is the application stack is going to go through fundamental change. Like every SaaS application is some combination of Angular and JavaScript and then MySQL and a Mongo. They are getting replaced by what I now am calling as the TOEL stack. You're going to have a TypeScript, OpenAI, a vector database, and LangChain. So all the SaaS applications are going to get built through that. So the application architectures are changing. But the more disruptive aspect of this, I feel, is that categories are going to change. What is going to happen at the topmost level is that the user experience are also going to be natural language. You and I have like a web application that we deal with whenever we interact with a SaaS application. That is going to be either a chat interface or it may even be a voice interface. When that happens, then you don't need multiple different UIs. You don't need a UI for an ERP. You don't need a UI for a CRM. You don't need you don't need a UI for like a subscription manager or like a customer support application. All the UI will all be through a simple natural language chat interface. When this happens, the categories of CRM, the categories of customer support, they all will go through redefinition. And when the categories are going to go through redefinition, then the companies that were doing really well in one category will find themselves having to redefine themselves into a newer category. So what is going to happen is that the UI layer, every industry is going to have its own copilot, right? And every SaaS application, starting from how HubSpot has done it, they are going to first start with building a co-pilot or a chat assistant along with their web application, that web UI that they're building. But then when you are going to have like a powerful chat interface that you're using in HubSpot, you don't have to interact with Intercom. You don't have to interact with a Salesforce. All of that will be just provided through just one interface. When that happens, categories get redefined. All SaaS companies will have to find their place again in the minds of the customer. So quite dramatic change. Now, I'm not talking about this is going to happen in the next 3 months or 5 months. In the next 5 years, you will see a lot of this change. And then underneath, like I said, there is going to be like a TOEL stack, and that application architectures are going to change. And then underneath that, most people are going to say, should I build it on top of a language model, or should I continue to build it like how I built it on top of an operating systems before? So lot of there are like multiple layers. A lot of the layers are all changing. It almost feels like an Ice Age 4 movie scene where like everything is shaking, and then you have to see how do you find your place.
on one part, I understand that we've already seen that a lot of SaaS companies added a chat interface and you can play with it and it gets trained with their data. But don't you think that in a CRM or you wanted to see the interface or you wanted to see all the contacts, all the notes, or did I get it wrong?
So you're right. What will happen is that in some applications you will have both a combination of the web UI and the chat interface. But more and more, what you would see is that the chat interface becomes the leading interface. Today, web UI is the leading interface, and chat is like a companion component. But like the role will get reversed. There would be cases where there would be some amount of UI that is needed.
I've also saw a debate that the most powerful companies in the future will not be those that have the best AI technology, but rather those that have the data, because it's the same AI, but you need to have the data to train it on. So probably those that will be the place that the wars will be fought. Let's say.
Sure. So data is definitely very important, and especially the more niche the data is the more important. The role of data in being important driver for value would be. My addition to this is that the wars will also be fought on the UI. Not that everybody will be able to fight the UI, and anybody who owns the UI is the one who owns the customer, right? A lot of the companies that I work with, we talk about it this way, that they will come for the AI, but they will stay for the UI, right? So the UI is going to be very, very critical. UI, the model, and the data, they're all going to play a critical role in terms of who becomes winner and who gets left out.
Yeah. And I saw you mentioned the search will also be changing. So from search engine optimization, we'll have prompt engine optimization. When do you think this will happen, and can you explain it further?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. After I wrote the blog post, then I came across another blog post that was written by this team called Animals, based out of Australia, very well known for SEO. And they were talking about how the collapse of SEO is going to happen almost 2 years ago, much before GPT 3.5 had come. So if you look at SaaS as a business, in the last 15 years, what has happened is the most critical role for growth of SaaS, especially when it is not an enterprise, where it is not relationship driven, is the invention of Google search, right? The SaaS as a business itself is a transition from one behavior to another. Like 20 years ago, if you were to purchase any enterprise software, you would actually get shipped a CD. Today, that's not how it works. I mean, in the last 15 years, that's not how it worked. You go to a website and then you say, hey, I want to try out this product. And if this is really good, then I'm going to swipe my credit card and then start using it, right? So yes. The software has moved from what I call as the selling to assisted buying. As in, people are really using this, and then you are, as a seller, you're just assisting them in the buying process, right? So therefore, it was very critical for you to be around when people are looking for something, help them through an experience, and then close it through making assistance. So Google search and SEO became very, very important in that lens, right? And Google was able to index different keywords and say that, oh, if it is CRM, I will send you to HubSpot, I will send you to Salesforce. And therefore, for Salesforce and HubSpot to be relevant in the eyes of the customer, they had to compete with each other to make sure that they are getting listed on top on Google. Now, when more and more people are going to move away from search as the default experience and then say, I'm going to find answers to my question through a powerful platform like ChatGPT, then the relevance of that will go down, right? And earlier in search, in Google search, if you wanted to come up on the result, then you just had to flood Google with more content of your own, which is what used to be called as search engine optimization, right? How do you make sure that you are getting ranked higher for your keyword? But when people change the behavior from not going to Google search and going to ChatGPT, then you have to influence ChatGPT, right, to say that when somebody is asking a question about which is a better CRM, then please make sure that you talk about this new startup, right? So how do you do this ChatGPT optimization so that your answers come better? And frankly, it's a problem I don't think a lot of people have thought about, and this may be something that may come in the way of how these models are get built. The way ChatGPT works is it crawls the internet once. and then takes that data and then says, okay, when I crawl the data and when somebody is asking a question about which is a better CRM, then it is doing its own inference. So a lot of people will now stop doing search engine optimization and this inference engine optimization, that whenever a chat GPT is trying to inference an answer, can somebody influence that, right? That is what people will start doing. So there is big implication for search, and content marketing as a role. It'll stop being like search engine optimization and something to do with this inference engine optimization.
We are also thinking about that because us as a marketplace, we are helping people find the right SaaS for their business, and we're thinking how can we tell ChatGPT in its language
Absolutely.
that this is the right this is the right software, this is the so yeah, it will be a very interesting future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about enterprises and AI strategies. How should they do it? How should they stay updated with all those changes?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've been having this conversation with a lot of startups and a lot of mid-sized companies. One thing is that there is a lot of technology change, right? So what anybody should do is ensure that they create a small team and let the team go and explore and understand what are the changes that are happening. Practically, I would say that they should get 2 or 3 of their engineers to be trained as like an AI engineer. I don't like the word prompt engineer as much, but an AI engineer who's going to be good at building on this towel stack that I talked about, TypeScript, OpenAI, and vector database and LangChain, because new applications that are getting built are all getting built on top of that. Right? So they should definitely go and explore that and then see what is it what will it mean for them to if they were to build an app with their own existing applications based on that. The other thing that I would say is that people have to actually follow the arc of change, right? What is changing? So strategy means taking a very deliberate choice, right? What are the choices that you're making in terms of what customer segments are you going to focus on, what technical architecture are you going to use, right? And what are the channels that you are going to use to sort of grow the business? These are things that are deliberate choices, right? That define strategy. So you have to think about what is changing. So you should go back to your customers and find out what are they doing with something like ChatGPT, right? What are the processes that they were doing before, and what process is getting replaced by ChatGPT, right? And then ensure and then see that this new process that is getting replaced by ChatGPT. Like, I have to give a specific example, right? People were earlier writing blog posts, and then if they're using ChatGPT to write their blog post, then all the MarTech company that was helping people around, let's say, content marketing or things like that, they have to understand that when end customers are going to use ChatGPT, copy paste the value from there, then what are the things that they should do, right? They should redesign their own workflow to this changed behavior that has happened with the customers, right? So a couple of things that I said. One is that you need to understand the change from a tech stack perspective. You need to send a team. Then you need to get your product team, and if it is a small team, then it is just the founder who's playing the role of the product manager. They need to go back to their customers and understand how the customer behaviors are changing. So marry the two and then say, the customer behaviors are changing, so therefore these are the new set of problems that customers are interested in. And then two is that this is a new tech stack that you have to use to actually solve this particular problem. So if you answer these two questions, then the strategy for an enterprise should be pretty easy for you to make sense of. And one of the things that I would say is that even though it's easy to talk about in 5 years what will change, and in 10 years what will change, the most interesting aspect of technology or in the world of startup is that you can only see things that is visible through one iteration of experiment that you're running. It's almost like we want to go to a certain place, how to drive or get there, but you're going to drive through your car, and the car is going to only show you a certain amount of visibility through your headlight, and that headlight is one iteration. So you talk to customers, you understand their behavior change, you get a team to build on whole stack, then combine these two, run one iteration, learn from that, and then continue to improve from there. That's how you build a strategy in the world of OpenAI and post ChatGPT.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, in theory it sounds easy because the companies that listen to their customers will always win in the end. but yeah, it will be different this time. Now let's move more on the investment side. Obviously, you have an accelerator. You are up to date with all those data. What changed in the investment area since ChatGPT launched?
So, so if you actually step back a little bit, we've been talking about like a rise of inflation, and we've been talking about like there is a funding crunch in India specifically. If we compare from last year to this year, like Q1 of 2022, about $1 billion of investment had gone in the first quarter, and then this year it was about 200 million. And similarly, from a global perspective, like there is a 57 to about 60% reduction in like investment that has gone in. But having said this, the investment in AI has jumped up, right? And therefore, we're seeing this interesting confluence of some people are saying winter is coming and some people are saying summer is coming, right? So both summer and winter are there at the same time. On the AI side, because like people were like reducing investment in all the other places, right? They still had money, so they are all channeling this to from an AI perspective. However, the question that people are asking, different investors are focusing on different things. One area where the investment is exploding is in the most bottommost stack, but like bottommost layer of this entire tech stack, right? Where like a lot of investment is going in places where people are training new language models, right? They are saying there is OpenAI, and then there is like open source data models, and then people are talking about vertical specific language models, right? And a lot of investment is going on saying, hey, can we come up with like better way, faster way to train? This is a like great amount of investment is going on there. The area where there is still things that are getting figured out is what is happening at the application layer. And if you ask me, on the application layer, nothing changes. Like how you were doing investment in a SaaS application before, you will continue to do now. Do you understand the customer? Do you understand the domain? Do you understand the customer processes? Do you understand the category that they are building in? Is it a new category or is it an existing category? The existing category was new category is still not fully understood, right? So at the application layer, people are making this bet that for every domain a new co-pilot will be created. Like for instance, in the legal domain, right? All the old SaaS companies which were CLMs, they are now looking like old incumbents, and all these old incumbents are now talking about how can I create a legal co-pilot, right? For the legal industry, for lawyers in big companies and lawyers in like law firms and things like that. So every industry is looking at a specific co-pilot, and people are taking bets around that. But practically, there is some amount of hesitation, and then people are also looking at saying, can somebody build a thin wrapper on top of OpenAI and map, like for instance, the content like experience that I said, people are using OpenAI or ChatGPT and then saying, can I use that to generate the content? But there might be a set of jobs that the customer is doing before and after, like for instance, doing an like SEMrush check, like saying what is the SEO rank for a blog post like this. So people are building thin wrappers around it, and that's where companies like Longshot and Jasper come in. A lot of thought process is also going into the middleware in terms of if you have to build this new application, you need new application monitoring. If you have to build new applications and connect them to language models, but make sure that you're connecting them to the older Oracle systems or older SAP systems, you need to build middleware. So there is a lot of emphasis and focus that is going on in the middleware. So the large language model is one area, then the middleware is another area, and then this co-pilot is another area. And like how do you reimagine older experience with or without a co-pilot? Like the marketing use cases that I said, that is another area where a lot of investment is going on.
Thank you for explaining. And how can investors differentiate between real AI startups and because as you mentioned, everybody is now an AI startup, but there are people that did it from 2019, and there are people that want to do it today. Maybe you can compare these two situations, and yeah, from an investment side, because you can easily be fooled by
Yeah,
marketing.
absolutely. So this is a great question. I think what investors must do is that they need to find what I call as a sidecar. They need to find somebody who has done AI and has understood the AI that happened before 2018, the pre-transformer architecture models, and then people who have understood and hands-on worked on the post-transformer architecture models, and understand what does it mean in terms of, even if let's say somebody's coming up with a new architecture which is different from transformer architecture, understand how do they compare with state of the art, because the state of the art after transformer architecture has come to a place where now it is ready for mainstream deployment. But if somebody says that I've built an AI but they're using old NLP models, old classifiers, then they're not doing a good job. You don't want somebody to build a product which is powered by a battery where the product should be really powered by AC DC electricity, right? So you need someone who can differentiate between saying, hey, this product is built by a tiny hacked battery, and this product is actually built by somebody who did the electricity circuitry and then made sure that the product is well built that way. So that would be the one key input that I would give, because to build that knowledge is going to involve doing a PhD, right? So somebody who's done that PhD and can help you differentiate and tell you which is what model and which is not. I think that will be key. That is from a tech perspective. Of course, from a business perspective, I think everybody is figuring out. One of the questions that I absolutely don't find any value in an early stage is the question of moats. A lot of people talk about moats, saying, and in early stage there are no moats. Moats are something that are built over a period of time. If you actually think about it, ChatGPT doesn't have a moat, right? It really grew to 100 million users, and if something which is 10x better, all the 100 million people will actually move away. Which is why I think funnily that Sam Altman is moving around and trying to use regulation as a moat. He's saying that he's calling the safety risk, but I feel that if he gets people to regulate in a way that it is favorable for him, then that provides a moat to a company like OpenAI. But what happens is that the moat as a question is something that is emergent. It gets built over a period of time. And what, Christian, you and I know from the world of SaaS is that the real moat in the world of SaaS is brand, right? People build brand, and that is what actually turns into a moat. There is no network effects. There is no data how Google or Facebook has that as a moat, right? So that I don't think is as useful. So just for an investor to be able to distinguish between a real AI company and someone who is just making it up by putting it in their slides and their website is by getting a technical person who has gone almost done a PhD, and this PhD also you don't want someone who's 20 years old. So someone who's 3 or 5 years earlier ahead, he has finished it, so that he understands all these technological changes that are there.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Those are my main questions. It was an absolutely insightful conversation, and I'm super grateful. If you have anything else to share on the podcast, please do.
Yeah, I would say that, from an AI perspective, if you really think about it, it is absolutely one of the best times. 15 years ago, back when I built my AI startup, I think, it was wrong timing. But now if you ignore AI, again, you will miss out on a lot of the tides that are happening that is going to change the industry in so many different ways, like the consumer industry, how we will move away from search to question and answers, and then in the enterprise where there is going to be a lot of redefinition of category. Definitely what I would say is that everybody should build their basic AI understanding and hang out with people who know this a little better, so that they can know this 1 or 2 steps ahead of the rest of the people. And if that happens, that is sufficient for them to actually become successful. Most of the success really involves in being 1 or 2 steps ahead, right? And if founders can tinker with AI and then find out what is changing in their SaaS process that they were building before, and they can reimagine their product using AI, I think that's going to be sufficient for them to be able to win this wave.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for the insights, and thank you for the positive energy. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me, and it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much.